If someone told you that ordinary words spoken every day could silently destroy peace inside your home, would you believe them? Stay with me because what you're about to hear is not a fairy tale or superstition. It's a warning born from experience, an experience I escaped from, but one I will never forget. My name is Helena. For many years, I was involved in practices where spoken language was treated as a tool of influence, not loud chants, not dramatic spells, just words, simple phrases spoken with emotion, repetition, and intention. We understood something most people never consider. Words shape reality long before actions do. When I walked away from that life, one truth haunted me more than anything else. Most families unknowingly damage their own homes by the words they repeat every day. Before I reveal the three curse words, understand this clearly. Words do more than communicate. They establish emotional temperature. They influence behavior. They mold belief. They either protect a home or slowly weaken it. This isn't magic. It's psychological. It's emotional. And yes, it's spiritual. The first curse word is hopelessness. Hopelessness does not usually arrive loudly. It slips into a home through ordinary sentences spoken during stress, fatigue, or disappointment. Words like, I can't do this anymore. Nothing ever works out for us. Things will never change, or what's the point of trying? Sound like momentary expressions of frustration, but when repeated, they become declarations. These phrases do not stay attached to the moment. They settle into the walls of the home and the minds of the people living there. Hopeless speech slowly rewires how a family thinks. When a parent consistently speaks from defeat, children absorb that mindset long before they understand its meaning. They learn that effort leads nowhere, that problems are permanent, and that life is something to endure rather than over. Even if hope is never directly taken away from them, it is quietly starved. Over time, this creates adults who hesitate to dream, fear failure intensely, and avoid challenges because they were raised in an environment where hope was constantly denied out loud. In the world I escaped from, hopelessness was never accidental. It was used intentionally because it weakens people from the inside. A person without hope stops resisting. They stop believing in solutions. They stop imagining a better future. That same principle plays out in ordinary homes every day without anyone realizing what is happening. When hopeless words become routine, motivation collapses, energy fades, joy feels inappropriate. Even moments of success are quickly dismissed with, it won't last. A home saturated in hopeless language feels heavy even during quiet times. Laughter becomes rare. Optimism feels unrealistic. Family members may still love each other, but they struggle to encourage one another because encouragement feels dishonest in an atmosphere trained to expect disappointment. This emotional weight often shows up as anxiety, chronic stress, or unexplained sadness, especially in children who cannot articulate what they are feeling but sense that something is wrong. Hopelessness also affects how problems are handled. Instead of seeking solutions, families begin to expect failure. Arguments escalate faster because no one believes change is possible. Conflicts are revisited again and again, not to heal them, but to confirm the belief that this is just how things are. Over time, this mindset creates stagnation. Dreams are postponed indefinitely. Growth stops. The home becomes a place of survival instead of development. The most dangerous aspect of hopeless speech is that it feels honest. People believe they are simply telling the truth about their circumstances. But words don't just describe reality, they help create it. Repeated hopeless statements train the brain to filter out opportunities, overlook progress, and magnify setbacks. Eventually, even when circumstances improve, the language does not. Breaking this curse begins with awareness. Replacing hopeless words does not mean denying hardship. It means refusing to surrender to it verbally, choosing phrases like, "This is hard, but we'll find a way," or "We're struggling now, not forever," reopens the door to resilience. Hope, once spoken consistently, begins to rebuild what hopelessness quietly destroyed. The second curse word is hatred. Hatred is one of the most destructive words that can be spoken inside a home because it does not disappear when the argument ends. Words like "I hate you," "You disgust me," "I can't stand you," or "I wish you weren't here" carry a weight far heavier than anger. Anger can cool down, but hatred settles in. It sinks deep into memory, shaping how people see themselves and each other long after the moment has passed. In emotionally charged situations, people often justify hateful words by saying they were spoken in the heat of the moment. But hatred spoken aloud does not remain tied to that moment. It echoes, it replays in the mind of the person who heard it, especially when spoken by someone they love or depend on. In a home where safety and trust should exist, hatred cuts deeper than anywhere else because it violates the expectation of care. From what I witnessed in darker practices, hatred was considered a powerful emotional weapon because it fractures bonds without needing repetition. One sentence spoken in hatred can undo years of trust. It creates invisible walls between people who still live under the same roof. Conversations become guarded. Affection feels unsafe. Even kindness can be questioned because the memory of hatred lingers underneath every interaction. Children are especially vulnerable to hateful language. When they hear hatred spoken, whether directed at them or between adults, they internalize it as instability. A child who hears "I hate you" does not process it as temporary anger. They hear rejection. They hear conditional love. Over time, this can produce deep insecurity, people-pleasing behavior, emotional withdrawal, or explosive anger of their own. Hatred teaches children that love can turn hostile without warning. Hatred also changes how conflicts are handled. Once hateful words enter a household, disagreements stop being about solutions and start becoming about dominance and emotional survival. Arguments escalate faster, apologies feel shallow, and forgiveness becomes difficult because the emotional damage feels too severe to overlook. Even when families stay together, emotional distance grows. People coexist, but they no longer feel connected. One of the most dangerous aspects of hatred is how easily it becomes normalized. When hateful words are spoken often and quickly forgiven, they lose their shock value, but not their power. Families begin to accept emotional cruelty as normal communication. Sarcasm sharpens, respect erodes. What once would have caused deep hurt becomes routine, slowly poisoning the emotional atmosphere of the home. Hatred does not just damage relationships, it reshapes identity. A person repeatedly told they are hated begins to question their worth. They may carry that belief into friendships, marriages, and parenting, repeating the same language they once absorbed. In this way, hatred does not stay contained within one generation. It spread. Breaking this curse requires restraint and intention. It means choosing silence over cruelty and pausing before words turn into weapons. Replacing hatred with firm but respectful language does not weaken authority, it strengthens trust. A home protected from hateful speech becomes a place where conflict can exist without destroying connection. When hatred is removed from language, healing finally has room to begin. The third curse word is abandonment. Abandonment is one of the most damaging words that can be spoken inside a home because it attacks the foundation of safety itself. Statements such as, "I'm done with this family," "I'm leaving for good," "I don't care what happens to you," or "you're on your own," may be spoken during moments of anger or exhaustion, but their impact lasts far beyond the argument. These words do not simply express frustration, they announce instability. They tell everyone listening that love, protection, and commitment can be withdrawn at any moment. When abandonment language is spoken, fear is immediately activated. The human nervous system is wired to seek security, especially within the family unit. When that security is verbally threatened, the body reacts as if danger is present. Even if the speaker never actually leaves, the damage is already done. The home begins to feel unpredictable. Peace becomes fragile. Calm moments are overshadowed by the silent question, will this happen again? Children are the most deeply affected by abandonment words. When a child hears a parent say they are leaving or that the family is over, the child does not interpret it as emotional release. They hear loss. They hear rejection. They hear uncertainty about their future. Even if reassured later, the fear often remains stored in their emotional memory. This can lead to separation anxiety, emotional clinginess, difficulty trusting others, or the opposite, emotional detachment, as a form of self-protection. Partners also internalize abandonment language, though they may hide it better. When threats of leaving are spoken repeatedly, trust erodes, stability feels temporary. Instead of addressing problems openly, people begin to emotionally withdraw, preparing themselves for a departure that may never come, but feels inevitable. Love becomes guarded. Vulnerability feels risky. Over time, this emotional distance weakens the bond far more than the original conflict ever could. In the darker systems I once observed, abandonment language was used intentionally because it creates chaos without requiring action. Fear does the work on its own. Once fear enters a home, communication breaks down. Small disagreements feel dangerous. People walk on eggshells, not knowing which moment might trigger another threat of separation. The home may remain physically intact, but emotionally it becomes unstable. Abandonment words also teach destructive patterns. Children raised in homes where separation is spoken casually often grow up repeating the same language in their own relationships. They learn to threaten departure instead of seeking resolution. Conflict becomes something to escape rather than work through. In this way, abandonment speech does not stay confined to one household. It becomes generational. One of the most dangerous aspects of abandonment language is how easily it is excused. People say, "I didn't mean it," or "I was just angry." But words do not require intention to cause harm. Once spoken, they cannot be unheard. Repeated threats of leaving slowly convince the household that connection is conditional and temporary. Breaking this curse requires replacing threats with reassurance. Even during conflict, saying, "I'm overwhelmed, but I'm not leaving," or "we need space to calm down, not separation," preserves safety while still honoring emotion. A home where abandonment is never spoken becomes a place where problems can be faced without fear of collapse. Stability, once restored through words, allows healing and trust to grow again. You may think these are only emotional expressions, but listen carefully. Every word carries intention. Every repetition strengthens belief, and every belief eventually becomes behavior. In the darker systems I once knew, constant negative speech was more effective than rituals, because people unknowingly destroyed themselves from the inside out. If you desire peace in your home, change what you speak, Replace despair with hope. Replace hatred with restraint. Replace threats of separation with words of commitment. Strength into your household. Declare unity over conflict. Declare protection over fear. Declare growth over stagnation. Your words are seeds. What you plant today becomes the atmosphere you live in tomorrow. Thank you for listening. If this message helped you, share it with someone who needs it. Stay blessed and choose your words wisely.